The stars had been quiet for 900 years. Admiral stood on the bridge of the HSS Horizon's edge, watching the endless darkness through the main viewport. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and deep lines around her eyes. Those eyes had seen too much in her long career. Wars, deaths, the terrible things that happened when people stopped talking and started shooting. But that was all behind her now. This was a simple mission: carry food and medicine to the refugee stations along the rim, help people who had nowhere else to go, then return home to Earth, retire, and finally meet her grandchild. She smiled at that thought. Little was already 6 months old and had only seen pictures. Her daughter sent videos every week, but it was not the same as holding the baby in her arms. "Admiral," said her first officer commander. He was a tall man with worried eyes. "We are picking up a ship on our sensors, military vessel, patrol class." Nodded slowly. This was neutral space, the buffer zone between human territory and the Empire. Both sides were allowed here, but neither was supposed to cause trouble. "Keep our course steady," she said. "We have nothing to hide." The Empire had been humanity's neighbor for over 1,000 years. The first contact had not gone well. 2 centuries of war had followed, terrible and bloody. Billions had died on both sides. Finally, exhausted and horrified by what they had done to each other, humans had signed the Galactic Compact. 900 years of peace. It was not a warm peace. The 2 species did not trust each other. But they traded, they talked, and most importantly, they did not kill each other anymore. The ship grew larger on the. It was a sleek vessel, built for speed and combat. Its hull was the deep purple color that all military ships wore. The name painted on its side translated to dominance of stars. "They are hailing us, Admiral," said the communications officer. "Put them through." The flickered and a face appeared. Looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin was pale blue, their eyes completely black, and their ears pointed sharply upward. This one was young, probably no more than 30 in human years. He wore the uniform of a commander, and his expression was cold and proud. "Human vessel," he said. "I am commander of the Imperial Navy. You will stop your engines and prepare to be inspected." Kept her voice calm and polite. "Commander, this is Admiral of the Terran Humanitarian Fleet. We are carrying medical supplies and food for the refugee stations. This is neutral space, and under the compact, you have no authority to inspect our cargo." His black eyes narrowed. "The Empire has received reports of human ships carrying weapons through the rim. We will inspect your vessel, or we will assume you are hiding something." "There are no weapons on this ship, Commander. Only medicine and food for people in need. I am happy to send you our cargo manifest, but I cannot allow an inspection. The compact is clear on this matter." Saw something flash in the young commander's eyes. Anger, pride, the dangerous combination that had started so many wars throughout history. "You dare to refuse me," said. "Do you know who I am? My uncle sits on the Emperor's council. My family has served the Empire for 20 generations. I mean no disrespect to you or your family, Commander, but the law is the law. I am sure the Emperor would not want an incident in neutral space over a simple cargo inspection." For a long moment, stared at her through the screen. Had dealt with proud young officers before, from many different species. Usually, they backed down when they realized they could not win. Usually, common sense won over pride. But not always. "You will regret this," Human said. The screen went dark. Commander stepped closer to. "Admiral, should we raise shields?" Considered it. Raising shields might be seen as an act of aggression. It might give the excuse he was looking for, but leaving them down was also a risk. Before she could decide, the ship shook violently. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered, grabbed the railing to keep from falling as the deck tilted beneath her feet. "Report," she shouted. "Plasma bolt," yelled back, his face lit by the red emergency lights. They fired on us, direct hit to the forward section. Another explosion rocked the ship, heard screaming somewhere behind her, metal groaned and twisted. The smell of burning filled the air. "Shields up, all hands to emergency stations," commanded. But even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. The Horizon's Edge was not a warship. It had basic shields, basic weapons. It was built to carry cargo, not to fight. A third bolt struck the bridge directly. The world became fire and noise and pain. Felt herself thrown through the air. She hit something hard and fell to the ground. When she opened her eyes, she saw only smoke and sparks and the bodies of her crew scattered around her. She tried to move, but her body would not obey. She could feel blood running down her face, warm and wet. She could hear Commander calling her name from somewhere far away. The stars outside the shattered viewport were so beautiful, had always loved the stars. Even as a little girl growing up she had looked up at the night sky and dreamed of flying among them. She thought of her daughter, her granddaughter who served on a destroyer somewhere in the fleet, little baby who she would never hold. "I am sorry," she whispered to no one. "I wanted to come home." Admiral closed her eyes and did not open them again. On the bridge of the dominance of stars, Commander watched the human ship burn. He felt a moment of doubt, a cold feeling in his stomach. He had only meant to fire a warning shot. He had only meant to scare them. But the doubt passed quickly. They were only humans after all, weak, emotional creatures who had been lucky in the old wars. The Empire would protect him. His uncle would make sure of it. "Set course for home," he ordered his crew. "This incident is over." He was very, very wrong. The incident was just beginning, and it would change the galaxy forever. 47 humans died on the Horizon's Edge that day. Their names would be remembered. Their deaths would be mourned. But one name would echo louder than all the others. One death would shake the foundations of an empire. Because they had not just killed a ship full of aid workers. They had killed Admiral. And humanity would never forgive them. The news traveled faster than light. Through relay stations and communication networks, across colonies and space stations, the message spread like fire through dry grass. Every human in the galaxy heard it within hours. A warship had attacked a humanitarian vessel in neutral space. 47 dead. Among them, Admiral. On Earth, in the Great Hall of the United Terran Congress, 500 representatives sat in complete silence. The holographic display showed the burning wreckage of the Horizon's Edge, still floating in the cold darkness of space. No one spoke. No one moved. The only sound was the quiet hum of the air systems. President Menu stood at the central podium, his hands gripping the edges so hard his knuckles turned white. He was a politician, trained to speak, trained to lead. But for the first time in his career, he had no words. Admiral was dead. Everyone in that room knew her name. Everyone in that room had a story about her. She was not just a military officer. She was a legend, a symbol, the living proof that humanity could be brave and kind at the same time. 30 years ago, when the star began to die, had commanded the evacuation fleet. Scientists said it was impossible. The supernova would happen too fast. There was not enough time to save everyone, but had refused to accept that answer. For 3 weeks, she had pushed her ships and her crews beyond all limits. She had personally coordinated the rescue of 2.3 million colonists, working without sleep until the last transport was safely away. When the star finally exploded, she was still in the danger zone, making sure no one was left behind. 20 years ago, when the colony rebelled against Earth's government, threatening civil war, had gone alone to negotiate. No guards, no weapons, just herself and her words. She had sat with the rebel leaders for 7 days, listening to their anger, understanding their pain. When she left, there was peace. Not because she had threatened them, but because she had respected them. And 15 years ago, when the Great Dome on Mars collapsed, trapping thousands of children in the toxic atmosphere, had led the rescue team herself. She was already 50 years old, already an admiral, but she had put on a suit and walked into the poison. Witnesses said she gave her oxygen mask to the children, breathing the thin, deadly air herself until help arrived. She had nearly died that day, but 87 children had lived because of her. This was the woman they had killed, not a warrior hungry for blood, not a politician seeking power, a grandmother who had spent her entire life saving people, no matter who they were or where they came from. In the Congress Hall, a young representative from the Mars colony stood up. Her name was Han, and her voice shook as she spoke. "Admiral saved my mother," she said. "During the dome collapse, my mother was 8 years old. She remembers the Admiral carrying her through the smoke, telling her everything would be okay." Tears ran down his face. "My mother named me after the Admiral's daughter. There are thousands of us. Children named after her family. Children who exist because she never gave up on anyone." All across the chamber, other representatives began to stand. One by one, they shared their stories. A colony that survived because of her. A ship that made it home because of her. A life that continued because had believed every human life was worth saving. On the military station, unyielding, Lieutenant received the news in the middle of her shift. She was checking weapons systems when her captain called her to his office. Captain Park was a hard man, strict and serious. He had served under Admiral 20 years ago during the negotiations. When entered his office, she saw something she had never seen before. Captain Park was crying. "Sir," said confused, "what is wrong?" He could not say the words. He simply handed her the transmission pad. Read it. Then she read it again. The words did not change. Her grandmother was dead. The woman who had taught her to fly, who had told her stories about the stars, who had held her hand at her father's funeral and promised that everything would be okay. Gone. Set the pad down carefully. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. Inside, something was breaking, but she would not let it show. Not here, not now. "What are our orders, sir?" she asked. Captain Park wiped his eyes and took a deep breath. Another transmission was coming through. He read it and his expression changed. The sadness was still there, but now there was something else, something harder. "The compact is dissolved," he said quietly. "We are at war." "Not at once. Then we should prepare the ship, sir." She turned and walked out of the office. She walked through the corridors of the Unyielding, past crew members who had already heard the news. Some of them were crying. Some were angry. Some just stared at nothing, trying to understand how the universe had changed so quickly. Found an empty storage room. She closed the door behind her, and there, alone in the darkness, she finally let herself feel. She did not scream. She did not break things. She simply sat on the cold floor and remembered. She remembered summer days on island, walking along the beach with her grandmother. She remembered the old woman's gentle voice explaining the patterns of the stars. She remembered the way her grandmother smiled, like she knew a secret that made everything beautiful. "Anger makes you stupid," her grandmother had always said. "Excellence makes you remembered." Closed her eyes and made a promise to herself. She would not fight with anger. She would fight with excellence. She would make her grandmother proud. When she left that storage room 30 minutes later, her eyes were dry and her heart was cold steel. She was no longer just lieutenant. She was the granddaughter of a legend, and she would show exactly what that meant. Across the galaxy, billions of humans were feeling the same thing: grief, rage, and a terrible, focused determination. The Empire had made a mistake. They had killed one old woman thinking she was nobody important. They did not understand. They could not understand. Admiral was not just a person. She was what humanity wanted to be. She was proof that strength and kindness could exist together. She was hope. And they had murdered hope. Now humanity would answer, not with words, not with complaints or negotiations, with something the had forgotten humans could do. War. The Empire had studied humanity for centuries. Their intelligence officers had written thousands of reports. Their scholars had analyzed human history, human culture, human psychology. They believed they understood these strange, short-lived creatures who had spread across the stars like weeds. Humans were emotional and chaotic, the reports said. They could not agree on anything. Their governments fought with each other constantly. Their corporations competed like wild animals. Even their families argued over small things. There was an old human saying that the love to quote, "Humanity cannot agree on dinner, let alone war." The Empire believed that if they ever pushed humanity, the humans would fall apart. They would argue about what to do. They would blame each other. By the time they made a decision, it would be too late. This was the greatest mistake in history. Within 72 hours of Admiral's death, every human colony, station, and outpost in the galaxy had mobilized. Not slowly, not with debate or argument. Like a single organism, humanity moved. On Earth, President Minu dissolved the normal government procedures. Emergency powers were activated for the first time in 400 years. The Congress voted unanimously to declare war. Not a single representative opposed it. Even the pacifist parties, who had spent decades arguing against military spending, stood and demanded justice. On Mars, the Federation Council met for only 15 minutes. The Martians had always been independent, always proud, always separate from Earth. For 50 years, they had demanded recognition as their own nation. Old arguments, old wounds, old anger. None of it mattered now. Governor Moon sent a single message to Earth. "We stand with our, tell us where to fight." Corporate fleets that had never fired a weapon volunteered for military service. Mining companies, transport corporations, research organizations. Ships that had been built to carry ore and passengers were suddenly armed with weapons that had been hidden in their cargo holds for centuries, just in case. And from the hidden places of human space, the real fleet emerged. They did not know about the shadow shipyards. Deep in asteroid fields, buried in the hearts of gas giants, floating in the empty darkness between stars, humanity had been building. For 900 years, while they smiled and traded and talked about peace, humans had been preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Fleet Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Humanity's Answer. He was 70 years old, with a face and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had spent his entire career preparing for this moment, praying it would never arrive. Now it was here, and he felt something he had not expected. "Come." "Status report," he said to his officers. Commander, his second-in-command, checked her displays. "All fleet elements responding, Admiral. Earth Defense Force fully mobilized. Mars Federation Navy en route to rendezvous point. Corporate auxiliary fleet armed and ready. Colonial militias standing by for orders." And the Shadow Fleet smiled grimly. 3,000 warships activated, sir. More coming online every hour. The Empire had 400 warships. They had believed this was enough to frighten humanity into submission. They had believed wrong. Admiral Shin activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His face appeared on every screen, in every ship, across the entire human armada. "Soldiers of humanity," he began. "For 900 years we kept the peace. We did this because Admiral and others like her taught us that peace was precious, that life was valuable, that even our enemies deserved the chance to choose a better path." He paused, letting the words settle. "The Empire has made their choice. They chose to murder 47 innocent people. They chose to kill a woman who had spent her entire life saving others. They chose to spit on everything we believe in." His voice hardened. "Now we will teach them what happens when that choice is made, not for vengeance. Vengeance is empty, not for conquest. We do not want their worlds. We fight so that no empire anywhere in this galaxy ever believes they can murder our people without consequence. We fight so that the next, whoever she may be, can do her work in peace. We fight because some things are worth fighting for." Across the fleet, millions of humans listened. Soldiers and pilots, engineers and medics, old veterans and young recruits. They came from Earth and Mars, from distant colonies and tiny outposts. They spoke different languages, followed different customs, believed in different gods. But in that moment they were one people, one family, united in grief and purpose. "Admiral once told me something I have never forgotten," Shin continued. "She said that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our numbers. It is our ability to come together when it matters most, to put aside our differences and stand as one. They believe we are weak because we argue among ourselves. They do not understand. Our arguments make us strong. They force us to listen, to learn, to grow. But when the time comes to act, we act with one voice and one will." He straightened his shoulders. "The time has come. All ships prepare for jump to space. We will give them one chance to surrender, one chance to hand over the murderer and face justice. If they refuse, then may their ancestors forgive them, because we will not." The fleet began to move. Thousands of engines ignited. Jump drives powered up. The largest human armada in 900 years prepared to cross the border into enemy territory. On the unyielding, Lieutenant sat in the cockpit of her fighter. She had not slept since hearing the news. She did not need sleep. Grief and purpose burned inside her like cold fire. Through the cockpit window, she could see the fleet stretching out in every direction. So many ships, so many people, all of them here because of her grandmother. "Excellence makes you remembered," whispered to herself. She would be excellent. She would honor everything her grandmother had taught her. And when this war was over, the galaxy would remember what happened when you harmed the wrong human. The jump countdown began. In space, the Emperor was just starting to receive reports about the human mobilization. His advisors told him not to worry. Humans were weak, they said. Humans were divided. This would all blow over in a few weeks. The Emperor believed them. He would not believe them for much longer. The human fleet emerged from jump space like a storm made of steel. Prime was a beautiful world. Blue oceans, green continents, 3 silver moons hanging in a purple sky. For 10,000 years it had been the heart of the empire, the center of civilization, home to 8 billion souls who had never known war on their own ground. That was about to change. Emperor III stood on the balcony of his palace, watching the sky fill with human ships. There were so many, more than his intelligence officers had ever imagined, more than anyone had believed possible. "How," he whispered, "how can there be so many?" His military advisor, General Tao, had no answer. The old general's blue face was pale with fear. He had fought humans once, long ago, in the final battles before the compact. He had hoped never to fight them again. "They hid them," said quietly. "All these centuries while we watched and waited, they were building. They never forgot the old wars. They just pretended to." The human flagship broadcast a message on all frequencies. Fleet Admiral Shin's face appeared on every screen on the planet. "People of Prime, your Emperor's forces murdered 47 innocent humans, including Admiral, a woman who devoted her life to peace. We do not wish to harm civilians. We do not wish to destroy your world. Surrender the murderer, Commander. Surrender your military forces. Accept responsibility for this crime. Do these things, and this war can end without more death." He paused. "Refuse, and you will learn why your ancestors signed the compact 900 years ago. You have 1 hour to decide." In the Imperial War Room stood before the Emperor. The young commander's arrogance had finally cracked. He could see his death in the Emperor's black eyes. "It was an accident," said desperately. "I only meant to frighten them. I did not know who she was. I did not know they would react like this." "You did not know," the Emperor repeated coldly. "You destroyed 900 years of peace because you did not know." Fell to his knees. "Please, your majesty, my uncle serves you. My family has always been loyal. Surely there must be a way to fix this." Emperor looked at the showing the human fleet. So many ships, so many weapons pointed at his world. His advisors were already calculating the odds of victory. The odds were 0. "Give him to the humans," one advisor suggested. "Perhaps it will satisfy them." "It will not," General said. "I know humans. They will want more than just one man. They will want us to kneel. They will want us to admit we were wrong." The emperor's pride burned at that thought. The empire had never knelt to anyone. For 10,000 years, they had ruled their corner of the galaxy with absolute power. To surrender now, to admit weakness, would destroy everything they believed about themselves. "We will fight," the emperor decided. "All ships engage the human fleet. Show them that the empire does not bend." The Battle of Prime began. It lasted 6 hours. Lieutenant flew in the first attack wave. Her fighter squadron screamed through the orbital defenses, dodging plasma fire and missile barrages. All around her, ships exploded and pilots died, but did not feel fear. She felt focus, pure, cold, perfect focus. Her grandmother had taught her to fly on the beaches of Ireland, using old simulation programs that had kept from her own training days. Those summer afternoons had been filled with laughter and love. Now they were paying off in fire and blood. Targeting computer locked onto a defense platform. She fired and the platform became a flower of flame. Another target, another kill. She moved through the battle like water flowing around obstacles, striking where the enemy was weakest. "Excellence makes you remembered," she whispered, and pulled the trigger again. The fleet fought bravely. They were good soldiers, well-trained and disciplined. But they were outnumbered 10 to 1, and they were facing an enemy that had prepared for this moment for 9 centuries. One by one, the warships fell. The dominance of Star's commander's ship was captured intact. Its crew surrendered when they realized their commander had already fled to the planet's surface. By the 4th hour, the orbital battle was over. Human ships controlled the space around Prime. Troop transports began descending toward the surface. Emperor watched from his balcony as human soldiers landed in his capital city. There was no fighting in the streets. The civilian population had already surrendered. They stood on the sidewalks, watching in silence as the invaders marched past. No looting, no violence, no revenge killings. The human soldiers were professional, disciplined, even polite. They secured military targets and left civilians alone. It was not what the emperor had expected. General appeared at his side. "Your Majesty, the humans are approaching the palace." "Then we will fight here. We will die with honor." Shook his head. "There is no honor in pointless death, Your Majesty." Admiral understood that. Perhaps it is time we learned it too. The emperor wanted to argue, but the words would not come. He looked at his beautiful palace, at his ancient throne room, at all the symbols of 10,000 years of power. None of it mattered now. "Very well," he said quietly. "Open the gates." Fleet Admiral Shin walked into the throne room with a guard of only 12 soldiers. He was making a point. He did not need an army to face the emperor. Humanity had already won. Sat on his throne trying to maintain some dignity. "You have your victory, human. What do you want?" Shin's face showed no triumph, only weariness and something like sadness. "Commander, your complete military surrender, and your personal acknowledgement broadcast to the entire galaxy that what your forces did was wrong. You want me to humiliate myself. I want you to tell the truth. That is not humiliation. That is the first step toward making things right." The emperor stared at this strange human, this old soldier who had conquered an empire in a single day, and asked for nothing but words. "And if I do these things, what then?" "Then we rebuild, not as enemies but as neighbors. Your people will not be enslaved or punished. Your culture will not be destroyed. But things will change. The empire will become something better, or it will become nothing at all. Thought about his ancestors who had built this empire through conquest and blood. He thought about whose arrogance had brought everything crashing down. He thought about Admiral, who had spent her life saving people instead of conquering them. Perhaps, he realized, humanity had been right all along. Perhaps peace was more valuable than pride. "Bring me Commander," the Emperor said, "and prepare a broadcast to the galaxy. It seems I have a confession to make." The war was over. But the real work was just beginning. 1 year had passed since the war ended. Lieutenant Commander stood before the memorial on Prime, watching the twin suns sink toward the horizon. The sky turned from purple to deep red, painting everything in colors that did not exist on Earth. The statue of her grandmother rose 10 meters into the air. It showed as she had been in life, calm, dignified, with that gentle smile that remembered so well. The sculptor had captured something true in the bronze face, something that made her heart ache every time she saw it. Beneath the statue, words were carved in both Korean and Galactic Standard. Knew them by heart, but she read them anyway. She taught us that peace was worth any sacrifice. In her memory, we proved that some sacrifices are too great to accept. The memorial stood in the center of what had once been the Imperial Plaza. Children played on the grass nearby, their blue faces laughing and curious. Some of them stopped to look at the statue, asking their parents who the human woman was and why she was so important. Their parents told them the story. The old admiral who had spent her life saving people, the young commander who had killed her, the war that had followed, the new world that had risen from the ashes. It was history now, just another story from the past, but for it was still fresh, still painful, still present. Footsteps approached behind her. She did not turn around. "I thought I would find you here," said Fleet Admiral Shin. He stood beside her, his face lit by the red sunset. He looked older than he had a year ago. The war had ended quickly, but the peace was proving harder. "The anniversary ceremony is tomorrow," Shin said. "The president wants you to speak." "I know. Will you?" Was silent for a long moment. She thought about all the things she could say, all the anger and grief and pride that still lived inside her. "What would she want me to say?" asked finally. Shin smiled slightly. "I asked myself that question many times during the war. Every time I gave an order that would kill someone, I wondered what Admiral would think. Would she approve? Would she understand? And what did you decide?" "I decided that she would be sad, sad that we had to fight, sad that people died, but also proud that we did it the right way. We could have destroyed Prime, we could have killed billions. We chose not to. We chose to be better than our anger." Touched the base of the statue, feeling the cold bronze beneath her fingers. "The trial ended yesterday," she said. "Commander was sentenced to life imprisonment, not execution, even after everything he did." "Your grandmother always believed in mercy," Shin said, "even for those who did not deserve it, especially for those who did not deserve it. She said that was the true test of civilization." "I know. I was at the trial. I looked at him, this young man who killed my grandmother, and I felt nothing. I expected to feel hate. I expected to want him dead. But all I felt was tired. That is healthy, I think. Hate is exhausting. It eats you from the inside." They stood in silence as the suns continued their slow descent. Prime was beautiful, had to admit. The purple sky, the silver moons, the strange flowers that bloomed in colors humans had no names for. She understood why her grandmother would have loved it here. "The reconstruction is going well," Shin said eventually. "The new government is cooperating. Trade routes are reopening. People are starting to believe that peace might actually work this time. Because we beat them. Because we showed them something they did not expect. Power without cruelty. Victory without vengeance. They spent 10,000 years building an empire through fear. We conquered them in a day and then helped them rebuild. It broke something in their thinking, made them question everything they believed. Thought about that. Her grandmother had always said that the best way to defeat an enemy was to make them a friend. It sounded naive, but somehow had made it work over and over again. The other empires are watching, Shin continued. The hegemony, the collective, all of them, they are very quiet now, very polite. They are afraid. They are respectful. There is a difference. Fear fades, respect lasts. They saw what happens when someone harms our people. They also saw that we do not abuse our power. That makes us something new in this galaxy, something they do not quite understand. A group of children ran past, chasing each other in some game. One of them, a little girl with bright black eyes, stopped in front of the memorial and bowed respectfully. It was a human gesture, something she must have learned from the occupation forces. Then she ran off to join her friends. Your grandmother would have liked that, Shin said softly. Yes, agreed, she would have. She straightened her uniform and took a deep breath. Tomorrow she would stand before billions of beings, human and alike, and speak about her grandmother. She would tell them about summer days on island, about gentle lessons on patience and courage, about a woman who believed that every life was precious and every person could be better. She would tell them that the galaxy had changed forever because of one shot fired at the wrong woman, not because was powerful or dangerous, but because she was good, because she represented everything humanity wanted to be. And she would tell them this. The memorial was not just for, it was for everyone who believed that kindness was not weakness, that peace was not surrender, that the strongest thing a person could do was choose to help others, even when it was hard, even when it hurt, even when no one was watching. The Empire thought they were firing at a ship, said, finally answering Shin's earlier question about what she would say tomorrow. They did not understand. They fired at everything she represented, every life she saved, every peace she kept, every child she taught that humans could be better than their worst impulses. She stepped back from the memorial, saluting the statue one final time. They fired at the wrong woman, and the galaxy will never forget it. Shin nodded slowly. That is exactly right, Commander. That is exactly what they need to hear. The twin suns finally disappeared below the horizon, and the silver moons rose to take their place. Somewhere in the city, music was playing. Music, strange and beautiful, mixing with the distant sound of human laughter. Two peoples learning to live together. Two cultures starting to understand each other. It would take time. There would be problems, arguments, setbacks, but it was possible now in a way it had never been before. Because one woman had shown them all what humanity could be. And her granddaughter was going to make sure no one ever forgot.